Vamos a iniciar, vamos a empezar a grabar la sesión.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for taking a moment to join us this evening to talk about school.
Gracias, buenas noches. Gracias por todos tomarse su tiempo para hablar hoy acerca de la educación y la escuela.
I am Kristen Feierabend, and I'm part of the Social and Economic Vitality team.
Buenas, soy la señorita Christine Feierabend y soy del equipo de la Vitalidad Económica y Social.
And that is a partnership between North Carolina Cooperative Extension and Wake County Human Services.
Y es una cooperación unida con la Extensión Cooperativa de Carolina del Norte y de los condados de Wake, el servicio de extensión.
And I just want to acknowledge that we have some other team members on the call. I won't call them all out, but just want to say thank you to Vielka Gabrielle for initiating these sessions, and Amanda Salami, who is also helping to organize and is helping with our chat box tonight.
También tenemos otros miembros del equipo, la señorita Vielka Gabriel y la señorita Amanda Salami. Muchas gracias por participar y mantener en contacto el chat.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned, I work with Social and Economic Vitality, which is a collaborative initiative to eliminate intergenerational poverty in Southeast Raleigh and Eastern Wake County. And our strategies are really holistic in nature, community-driven, and really designed to foster positive change for families, nonprofits, small businesses, and communities as a whole.
Como ya saben, yo pertenezco al Grupo de Vitalidad Económica y Social. Es una iniciativa colaborativa y de capas múltiples para eliminar la pobreza intergeneracional en el sureste de Raleigh y la parte este del condado de Wake. Las estrategias de este programa son holísticas de naturaleza, dirigidas a la comunidad y diseñadas para poder promover cambios positivos que apoyen a esas familias en desarrollo, organizaciones sin fines de lucro y pequeños negocios.
And I just want to shout out to Commissioner James West, who we have on the call tonight, who is a major champion and the catalyst for social and economic vitality. So we thank you, Dr. West, for this work and for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
También quiero agradecer al comisionado James West, que ha sido un gran impulsor de este programa. Agradezco su presencia.
So just to let you know that this is just one session that is part of a broader series of Let's Take a Moment. We've already had a few on healthy lifestyles, financial planning, and home ownership. And then we have several coming up in June and July on other topics like youth employment, adult employment, and mental wellness.
Okay, esta es la primera sesión de una cantidad de sesiones. Vamos a hablar un momento. También tenemos sesiones pasadas que hemos realizado acerca de estilos de vida saludables, planificación financiera. También tenemos distintas sesiones de recursos de empleo para jóvenes, recursos de bienestar mental y recursos de empleo para adultos.
And we will send the registration link and all of the slides from tonight's session and the recording out after the session so that you can go back and watch or sign up for other sessions.
Y al final de la sesión vamos a enviar el vínculo para la registración después de la sesión, donde pueden encontrar la información y también la grabación de la sesión.
Great. So participating tonight, I think most of you are muted. If you can keep yourself muted so that we don't get background noise. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat box or unmute yourself to ask a question. Since it's a smaller group, you're welcome to do that. And as I mentioned, the session is being recorded to view later. And if we need to remove anyone for inappropriate behavior or comments, then we can do so.
Okay, los que están participando hoy en la sesión, la mayoría están, sus micrófonos están en silencio, por favor manténganlos en silencio. Si tienen algún tipo de pregunta o comentario, pueden utilizar el cuadro de chat o pueden desbloquear su micrófono, ya que somos un grupo pequeño. La sesión está siendo grabada para que otros lo puedan ver más adelante y si vemos algún comportamiento no deseado, vamos a tener que remover a algunos individuos que no sigan el honor de nuestro propósito.
Awesome. And if you want to reach out to our team, Social and Economic Vitality, you can reach me, Kristen Feierabend, or Amanda Salami. Our information is on the screen. But other than that, that's my introduction. And I want to, first of all, thank Laura Rodriguez from Wake County Public Schools for serving as our interpreter for tonight. We had hoped to have separate lines so that Spanish speakers could listen separately, but Zoom is not cooperating, so we appreciate her doing it kind of on the fly, back to back. And, oh, you go ahead.
Aquí tenemos la información de contacto. Se pueden contactar con nosotros a través de estos correos electrónicos. Están nuestros números de teléfono. Yo soy la señorita Kristen Feierabend y a la señorita Amanda Salami también nos pueden contactar a través de estos vínculos y estos números de teléfono. Y acaba de agradecerme por ser la intérprete de esta noche.
Thank you. And so tonight I'm going to hand it over now to the team from Wake County Public Schools. Joining us tonight, we have Paul Koh, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, Dr. Marius Pettiford, Senior Director of Counseling and Student Services, and Dr. Maria Rosa Rangel, Director of Family Engagement. And I've had the opportunity to work with all of them in different settings, and it's an awesome team and great resource for you tonight. And Paul, I will pull up your slides.
Bueno, ahora vamos a pasar a la presentación del equipo que se va a presentar en estos momentos. Tenemos al señor Paul Koh, que es superintendente para los servicios de apoyo estudiantil. Tenemos al doctor Marius Pettiford, que también es director de los servicios de estudiantes y consejería. Y la doctora María Rosa Rangel, también directora del compromiso comunitario y familiar de la Oficina de Asuntos de Equidad. Voy a presentar mi pantalla.
So thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. And it's actually good to see all of you here. I see some familiar faces in various circles, and those of you like Thomas, Catherine, and anyone else on this group that's been working on the food security efforts, just know that we're really proud of our work. And, you know, to this day, we've distributed over 1.6 million meals as a group. So that's just a big shout out to the collective effort of both the school system and the county. So we're really glad to be here, and we're hoping to offer you some guidance on resources that will be helpful in the midst of school closure and as we pivot to the summer. So like Kristen and Laura said, my name's Paul Koh. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services. And some of my work has been around the food distribution efforts, but a big chunk of my work is also to make sure that we're working to connect students and families to, I guess, social, behavioral, mental health resources throughout every school year. But I'm going to let also my colleagues introduce themselves.
Buenas noches a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Estoy muy contento de que estén aquí. Y agradeciendo, veo muchas caras familiares, también Thomas, Catherine, que han puesto bastante esfuerzo en cuanto a la proporción y la seguridad de la comida. Estamos muy orgullosos del trabajo. Hemos distribuido 1.6 millones de alimentos y eso se ha realizado a través del condado de Wake y estamos muy orgullosos de esto. Principalmente trabajo alrededor de la distribución de la comida y los esfuerzos, para conectar también a las familias y al comportamiento, apoyar a las familias en cuanto al comportamiento social y mental. Estamos aquí para ofrecer una guía en cuanto a los recursos y esperar de que dentro de este medio de cierre escolar podamos adentrarnos, ahora que nos adentremos al verano, darle esos recursos que se necesitan. Yo soy el señor Paul Koh, soy asistente superintendente de los servicios de apoyo estudiantil y voy a dejar que mis colegas se presenten.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Marius Pettiford. I'm the Senior Director for Counseling and Student Services, and that encompasses the areas of school counseling, school social work, school psychology, and school nursing.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Paul Koh, mi nombre es el doctor Marius Pettiford y soy director de los servicios estudiantiles y consejería. Mis áreas involucran la consejería de la escuela y trabajo social.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Maria Rosa Rango, and I am the Director of Family and Community Engagement in the Office of Equity Affairs. Basically, my job is to support schools with family strategies. How can we better engage our families in the education of the children, as well as to provide professional development. I also oversee Family Academies, which we provide free parent workshops. We go into the community as well as supporting schools and also the faith community. So I am very happy to be here with you this evening.
So thank you, Dr. Pettiford. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
Yo soy la doctora María Rosa Rangel, soy directora del Departamento de Asuntos de Equidad, especialmente compromiso de familia y comunitaria. Mi principal labor es apoyar en las estrategias escolares, ayudar a involucrar a las familias, a la comunidad, al ambiente educativo, hacer talleres para las familias y apoyarlos en todas las áreas comunitarias y educativas.
So before I begin, I just wanted to make sure, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. So we know that in the context of our current world, it's grown ever more challenging with the COVID-19 pandemic, school closures, and the recent racial injustices in our country. We hope each of you are doing well as you can, and please know that we are doing all we can to hold this weight with you. And in tonight's presentation, we're hoping that you'll gain some insights into the resources available and know how to access these supports.
Sabemos que en el contexto de nuestro mundo ha crecido aún más las situaciones desafiantes con esta pandemia del COVID-19, el cierre escolar y las injusticias raciales más recientes en nuestro país. Esperamos que ustedes todos estén bien y por favor sepan que estamos sosteniendo esta carga con ustedes. En la presentación de esta noche esperamos que ustedes puedan obtener algunas ideas de los recursos disponibles y cómo podemos acceder a estos apoyos.
So the outcomes that we have for tonight's meeting are as follows. We want you to know the resources available to you through our one page of resources for families during this time. We also want you to know some resources to support your children as parents in this current context. We want you to know how to reach out to schools for support. And finally, we will engage in a question and answer session and do our best to give helpful responses. And if we can't answer some questions tonight, we'll make sure to circle back with Kristen to get back with you.
Los resultados que tenemos para la reunión de esta noche, queremos que también conozcan los recursos disponibles a través de nuestra página única de recursos para familia durante este tiempo. Queremos que conozcan algunos recursos para apoyar a sus hijos, como a los padres en este contexto actual. También queremos que conozcan cómo contactar a las escuelas para apoyo. Y también vamos a nos vamos a involucrar en una sesión de preguntas y respuestas y hacer lo mejor para darles nuestras respuestas.
So I believe the one page of resources has already been shared with you, but we'll share this presentation with you. And if you look at the bottom of each slide, you'll see links to the English and Spanish versions of the one page of resources.
Creemos que ya hemos compartido la página única de recursos con ustedes, pero también la vamos a compartir a través de esta presentación en el cuadro del chat. Si ven al final de cada hoja de presentación, van a ver los vínculos de las versiones en inglés y en español de la página única de recursos.
And so now I'm going to pass it to Dr. Pettiford.
Ahora le voy a dar el pase al Dr. Pettiford.
Good evening again. We want to be sure that you have this particular flyer that's in English and Spanish so that you can see the resources that we've developed in this one pager to support families so that they know how to access the support that they need. You'll notice that the flyer covers resources around how to connect with your school, how to access the devices and to get support with the devices, housing and hotel assistance information, how to enroll in the Wake County Public School System during this period of COVID-19. Also resources from Wake County. We also have information and links to the food distribution sites and also support for loss of housing. This has really been a Herculean effort by a lot of our student services staff members our community partners. We have all worked together in countless meetings to make sure that we get information out to families, because we know that not all families are getting all the information through our normal channels. And so we want to do a specific outreach through the community and through community partners to make sure families know what they need. Well, so that we know what they need and how they can connect to the resources.
Aquí tenemos, como observan en la pantalla, aquí tenemos una guía de recursos que hemos hecho durante un esfuerzo de todo el equipo de la zona educativa, que hemos trabajado en el volante y tiene la versión en español y en inglés. Y la idea es que ellos puedan acceder al apoyo que necesiten las familias. Hemos desarrollado esta página y cubre los siguientes recursos: cómo conectarse con su escuela, cómo acceder a los aparatos o apoyos con estos aparatos, asistencia de vivienda, también cómo inscribirse en el sistema de escuelas públicas del condado de Wake, utilizar los recursos del condado de Wake. También tenemos vínculos para la distribución de sitios de distribución de comida y apoyar a aquellas familias que hayan perdido la vivienda. Esto ha sido un esfuerzo que hemos realizado entre todos los miembros y hemos trabajado todos juntos para darle esta información y que llegue a cada una de las familias. Estamos haciendo trabajo en específico para que las familias sepan qué recursos están disponibles para ellos.
And I definitely want to draw your attention to the fact that on the flyer, there, if you're unable to reach a school for any specific reason, there is a general customer service number that we do encourage families to use for any other questions.
Okay, también vemos en el volante que si no pueden contactarse con alguna de las escuelas, también hay un número de servicio al cliente para que las familias puedan realizar ese contacto al final del volante.
And I'll pass to Dr. Rangel.
Ahora le voy a dar el pase a la doctora Rangel.
Can you go to the next slide? So the Office of Equity Affairs has been busy developing resources for our parents. And right here we have 10 consejos para enseñar y hablar a los niños, which is 10 tips for teaching and talking to kids about race. And also another resource, which is great, is Read Brightly, How to Talk to Kids About Race, that actually has a lot of books and resources for parents. Herramientas para los padres de cómo hablar con sus hijos sobre el racismo. Actually, this next link, it's, if you go to it, it also gives it to you. It's a toolkit for parents on how to talk to your child about race. I actually suggest for you parents to look into that. Right now it shows in Spanish, but once you go in there on the top of the webpage, you can see, and you just press English and it will give you the whole information in English. And also we have developed emotional support for students for WCPS. You could go to those links and it will take you to those resources.
Okay, aquí también tenemos distintos recursos que, como dijo la doctora, 10 consejos para enseñar y hablar a los niños acerca de la raza. Aquí tenemos los distintos vínculos. Si pueden entrar a los vínculos, van a ver la versión en inglés y también lo pueden ver en español. También hay herramientas para los padres de cómo hablar de tus hijos sobre el racismo y los diferentes recursos también emocionales para los estudiantes del sistema de escuelas públicas del condado de Wake.
Also, one of the things, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that I oversee the Family Academies, which are free parent workshops. And every Tuesday and Friday, if you go to our WCPS Family Academy on Facebook, at 4:30, we do English workshops. And we try to mirror the same workshop in English as well as in Spanish. So at 6:30 we do Spanish. You could also go to our Facebook page and there will be recorded sessions, past sessions that you could view whenever you would like to.
Okay, también como les mencioné, yo también trabajo con la Academia Familiar y hacemos talleres para padres. También si ven el vínculo que ven en la pantalla, ven el vínculo para la Academia Familiar del Sistema de Escuelas Públicas del Condado de Wake en la página de Facebook. Tenemos sesiones y talleres en inglés a las 4:30 de la tarde y también tenemos sesiones en español a las 6:30, como también tenemos vínculos de talleres ya pregrabados donde pueden observar cada uno de los talleres si lo quieren ver en otro momento.
And the workshops are educational workshops that we try to give parents the academic tools to support the kids with their academics at home.
Y los talleres son talleres educativos, donde le damos a los padres herramientas para apoyar a los estudiantes y a sus hijos con herramientas educativas para utilizar en el hogar.
Paul, we can't hear you.
Let me try that again. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So from tonight's presentation, if you have more questions after the session is over, please make sure to reach out to Kristen and she will connect your questions to us and we'll circle back with you. And just as a reminder, if you need to connect with the school, please make sure to go through the website link that's on both the flyer and that's on here on the presentation slide, the WCPSS.net domain 132. If you need help finding food sites near you, going to the WCPSS.net food, that's the best place for us to find. There's also a county link. But for support with any internet or device needs, you can contact our remote learning help desk at 919-694-8100. And again, you could continue reviewing the one pager for additional supports, but we also ask you, if you know people in your community that don't know about these resources, please spread the word and pass these out via text message or email or however you can so that everyone has this information in case they're in need.
Ok, de la presentación de esta noche, si tienen algunas preguntas después de que se termine la sesión, por favor mándenle un correo a Kristen y ella se va a conectar con preguntas y le devolveremos la respuesta. También como recordatorio, si necesitan conectarse o comunicarse con la escuela, pueden encontrar a través del vínculo que se encuentra aquí en la página que dice www.net/domain132, ahí se pueden conectar con la escuela. Si también necesitan cómo saber algunos sitios de distribución de comida, pueden ir al vínculo de distribución de comida que dice www.wcpss.net/food. Y luego, si necesitan apoyo con algún aparato o situación que se les presente con internet, pueden contactar a la ayuda de escritorio de aprendizaje remoto al 919-694-8100. Y si necesitan revisar también para apoyos adicionales la página de recursos que hemos creado para ustedes y por supuesto regar la voz si tienen algunos conocidos o familias que aún no tengan estos recursos, por favor manden un mensaje de texto o a través de correo electrónico y rieguen la palabra y digan de que estos recursos están disponibles para todos.
So for now, I will stop sharing, but I'll also put the link to the presentation in the chat box. But now we'll answer any questions that you may have from tonight's presentation.
Okay, voy a dejar de compartir mi pantalla y ahora vamos a abrir la sesión de preguntas y respuestas de la presentación de hoy.
Thank you all. So Paul did just share the link to the presentation, which, Paul, they can then click to access the one-pager?
Yes.
Great.
Acaban de compartir por el chat el vínculo para la presentación.
Great. And we have one question in the chat so far, which is, will you be printing the one-pager out to be handed out with bags and boxes at the food sites?
So at our school sites, we haven't printed out these one-page resources yet, but our county partners have taken these and there's been a group that's been piloting how to get to, we've been kind of doing our best guesses on the neighborhoods that we've had the most limited contact. And so we have a group of folks led by Vielka and Catherine's group that goes out to the communities to pass these out to make sure that community members can spread the word. So we've done that through those avenues, but we haven't provided at the school sites because our assumption is that our school, the folks who are coming to our school sites are connected to our schools and they know how to get the information. We just felt that this was important for the families who might have been more disconnected with the information.
Una de las preguntas dice lo siguiente: usted va a estar imprimiendo la página que va a estar entregado con las cajas en los lugares donde se entrega la distribución de comida y aún no lo han impreso. Están haciendo lo mejor para ir a las familias donde las zonas donde hay mayor limitación y también trabajar con los miembros de las comunidades para que se siga regando la voz en cuanto a estos recursos.
And a question from Catherine. We have heard that traditional schools will reopen on August 17th. Can you confirm that? And what kind of plans, changes, etc. are you all expecting to make? Will our kids still need these resources if schools do reopen? So kind of several questions.
Yes, so right now, we are still, the target is sometime in August. Both our year-rounds and traditional schools will be opening. But until we get official guidance from the state that's supposed to be coming July 1st, we can't confirm the exact dates because we don't know what the situation around COVID will be. But as we speak, the district is working on reopening plans that range anywhere from, that starts with like the school calendars, but goes all the way to, you know, I'm leading a committee around the behavioral health resources that are needed. There's a group working on multi-tiered instruction. There's a group that is also doing the health guidelines, transportation, child nutrition services. So we are all working hard and planning in various committees. But I don't know if my colleagues wanted to add anything.
As far as the devices, we are asking for the students to keep them because again, we don't know what can happen. And we want to make sure that they have their equipment in case something happens, Wi-Fi, tablets, whatever device they have.
Okay, la pregunta estaba relacionada en que si las escuelas van a reabrir el 17 de agosto, si pueden confirmar y si hay planes que están tomando la zona educativa en cuanto a eso. La respuesta es que se planifica abrir algún tiempo en agosto, también para el horario tradicional, pero igual hay que esperar las directivas del Estado que se van a implementar el 1 de julio. Entonces todavía no se pueden confirmar, sin embargo hemos estado trabajando duro, haciendo instrucción también para trabajar en pasos y una línea de salud, trabajando con la parte del transporte de la manera en cómo vamos a reabrir las escuelas. Y la doctora Arangel acaba de decir que también le estamos pidiendo a los estudiantes que mantengan sus aparatos que fueron entregados por la zona escolar para que en dado caso que necesiten estos recursos, los tengan disponibles.
Thank you. While we're talking about technology, Paul, do you have an idea of how many students still need the technology? And part two, I know there are some services offering free internet through a certain date. Do you know anything about whether that opportunity is being extended given the current situation?
Yeah, so the rough numbers I can give is that so far we've distributed about 18,000 devices to families in need, and that information has come through our schools. So families have reached out to schools, and we did device pickups at schools, but we've also been working with our transportation team to also deliver devices into neighborhoods where families can't come to school to pick up. So there's one. And then around the hotspots and the internet, there was an initiative with Activate Good to pass out hotspots as well. To this date, we don't have confirmation that will be extended further. But what we would say is that if any family still has device and or internet needs, the best place to reach out to is through their school. And then the school will get in touch with the family on how best to get help, whether it's devices or hotspots.
En cuanto a si los estudiantes necesitan de tecnología, bueno, hemos distribuido alrededor de 18.000 aparatos a familias en necesidad. Las familias que han sido contactadas, hemos estado trabajando con el equipo de transporte para entregar a cada una de las familias y distribuirles los aparatos que han necesitado. En cuanto al hotspot, también hemos distribuido, pero actualmente no tenemos confirmación de que eso se vaya a extender aún más. Sin embargo, si hay familias que necesiten de recursos, lo más seguro es que puedan contactar a la escuela directamente.
Thank you. If families express a need for academic support for their child during the summer months, will the schools be providing any camps or workshops, either in person or virtual?
Yeah, so right now there are plans for summer learning happening. To what extent that it's going to be, we don't know. Like it might look something like we have it available just for like pre-K 5, but maybe not in secondary because of COVID. So we're finalizing those plans, and that's one of the more urgent things that we're trying to get past at next Tuesday's board meeting. So we'll have more updates after that about what the official summer learning plan looks like.
Can I add something to that too?
Yes.
Also, we encourage families to go to our website for remote learning, where students have access to many online resources, and they're broken down by grade level. So that's a great resource that our students can utilize while they're at home.
Okay, aquí la pregunta hablaba acerca de cómo se espera recibir el apoyo académico a los estudiantes durante los meses en el verano, si se van a proporcionar algunos talleres. Y bueno, hay planes para el aprendizaje durante el verano, pero aún no está muy claro. De repente se presenta un plan para los de pre-kinder hasta quinto grado, pero no aún en la educación secundaria. Estamos trabajando en eso, finalizando los planes, y en nuestra próxima reunión, que es el martes, vamos a finiquitar más esos detalles. Sin embargo, también en la página de aprendizaje remoto, en nuestra página web, pueden acceder a recursos en línea que pueden utilizar los estudiantes para acceder a estos recursos.
Thank you. Question from Fernando. Oh, hi, Fernando. Would Wake County Public Schools hire more school nurses and implement COVID-19 testing at school? Is that a possible option?
So for right now, I could ask Dr. Pettiford to also add to this, but the way we've set up nursing in our district is in partnership with Wake County Human Services. So our nursing, the nurses who are in schools are provided by our Wake County Human Services partners. So in terms of hiring, I think there's been, a few additions for this coming fiscal year, but as you know, with COVID, the budget implications for the upcoming fiscal year are much tighter. So we have to see where we land as the budgets get passed. But what I will say is that our plans are to continue partnering with Wake County Human Services, and part of what we're doing is setting up the health guidelines. That's one of the committees that is working on for schools is how are we going to implement the health guidelines at every school and make sure that kids' families are safe and that visitors are also, given clear protocols on how to interact with our school spaces.
En cuanto si van a contratar más enfermeras para implementar pruebas del COVID-19 en las escuelas, bueno, hemos trabajado en algunas implementaciones en cuanto a esto. Sin embargo, nuestro presupuesto se ha puesto un poco más corto con lo de la situación del COVID-19, pero estamos planificando continuar trabajando con el Servicio de Recursos Humanos del Condado de Wake y establecer ideas de cómo mantener a nuestras familias seguras y mantener los protocolos de seguridad en las escuelas.
I think the other thing to add about the school nursing piece is that it's important to know that, we use a delegation model in our county, and those nurses train staff members to perform certain duties. So that training is taking place so that our staff members are ready to do some of those duties as needed. But also, the Wake County Human Services nurses also are assigned to the EOC and the health department during pandemic situations. So we don't have, they're not readily available for school sites. But we are working with them collaboratively to develop a plan on how we're going to address the needs of our schools. So I think, Fernando, that gets to your question about, will there be more nurses? The answer would be to that would be no.
En cuanto a la respuesta, lo que puedo agregar es que estamos utilizando, trabajando con miembros del equipo y de la delegación para realizar ciertos trabajos, ¿verdad? Dentro de lo personal. Sabemos que nuestras enfermeras de los servicios de recursos humanos del condado de Wake también están asignadas al departamento de salud y la necesitan para hacer otras labores. Entonces, por ahora no van a estar disponibles dentro del entorno escolar o dentro de las escuelas. Eso responde a la pregunta que estaban haciendo.
Question from Verna, will grades continue to be pass-fail, or will the previous grading methods be reinstated with the new school year?
So for a quick answer to that is right now we're still working on that. And I think the guidance for grading will be dependent on what NCDPI also guides us with, because in the response to the COVID pandemic, they provided us guidance and some parameters on what grading should look like. So as we move into, because every school district will be required to have a remote learning plan, but with that, what grading will look like if it's in the tradition, it's not going to be, my sense is that I don't think it's going to be like it was during the last 3 months, but we're going to have to figure out, as there's the potential for a resurgence of COVID, how are we going to adjust when we know that we're still not quite at a place where we're a one-to-one district. So we want to be fair and equitable to students still.
En cuanto a la pregunta si va a haber calificaciones aún después de cuando empiezan las clases de pasar o reprobar, todavía estamos trabajando, el condado escolar todavía está trabajando en eso. Necesitamos establecer las guías y parámetros para poder establecer las calificaciones y cómo estas calificaciones se van a ver una vez que reabran las escuelas. Cada escuela debería tener un plan de aprendizaje remoto y debemos ajustarnos para que también seamos justos con los estudiantes.
Do you all know the racial or ethnic demographics for families that have not been able to access the remote learning?
I think we could probably track it. We haven't broken it down by the racial data, but we do have a range of families that we haven't been in touch with, that it's coupled with both information from schools, but also tracking how many students have logged on over the course of the last 3 months. I don't have that in front of me right now, but there is a significant number that's either in the hundreds or thousands that we have still struggled to reach. And some of the things that we find out through our social worker contacts is that some families have moved out of the county because of economic needs, because the parents have found jobs not in Wake County, but maybe outside the state or in different counties. But the students are still completing distance learning during this remote time. So I think there's a lot of that information that we're still gathering and tracking, but we know that there is a significant need that we're still trying to close and have been trying to close since March.
En cuanto a si hay datos raciales o demográficos, en cuanto a quiénes son los estudiantes que han podido acceder al aprendizaje remoto, tenemos muchos estudiantes, no lo tengo enfrente esos datos en estos momentos, pero hay estudiantes que se han podido ingresar a través del aprendizaje remoto. Va en el rango de los 100 o los 1000 que aún tienen dificultades y no hemos podido contactar. Sin embargo, a algunas familias también sabemos que se han mudado a otros condados y porque han tenido oportunidades laborales en otros condados, pero también de esa información todavía la estamos recogiendo.
So regarding Catherine's question about how many, that sounds like you all are a little unclear, but could be hundreds or thousands who are not connected.
Yeah, because I think a lot of our schools have maybe made initial contact, but to say that they have the full breadth of services, we're not quite yet sure, because we've maybe gotten in touch with them once, but after that one time, maybe we're having more trouble connecting with them. So it's kind of like a moving target that we're trying to make sure to assess. But Dr. Pettiford is also going to be leading a task force with his team, so that as schools reopen, that the social workers and the CAS team are doing all we can to reach out to families that have not been in full contact with us during this time.
Sí, en ese aspecto no estamos completamente seguros en cuanto a los números porque es algo muy difícil de medir. Sin embargo, una vez que las escuelas reabran, los trabajadores sociales van a contactarse con esas familias que no han podido estar en contacto a través del aprendizaje remoto.
And a question from Derek. It looks like maybe you kind of spoke a little bit to this earlier, Paul, but what support will be provided to those students who were unable to fully engage in remote learning during the spring to ensure that they're on grade level next school year?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and I think it gets at the crux of maybe what this reopening effort is going to look like for us, is that kids are returning to school from a context that's never really been experienced before from all of us, and then they're returning to school that's also going to look completely different. And so part of the reopening efforts that we're working on, both on the instructional level, but on the behavioral health, social emotional, and mental wellness level, is thinking about what do we need to do at the core level for all kids, and then what are the intense cases where we need to support students more with more interventions from the first day of school and onward, so that we could get to as close to normal as possible. And I think our plan is to support all kids as they need and meet them where they're at. But to say that we want to have kids return to school and then just start opening up books and dig into assignments, that's not the way we're going to approach this. It's going to be more important that every school gets clear on, do we understand where our kids are at when they've come from this COVID context and school closures, and is there a way that we could make sure we understand like the full breadth of what our kids need, and do some needs assessments first, and then figure out how to respond accordingly.
Ok, en cuanto a la pregunta, ¿cuál es el apoyo que se le va a proporcionar a los estudiantes que no han estado involucrados en cuanto al aprendizaje remoto? Regresando de la escuela, se va a ver muy distinto para los estudiantes porque es una situación que no ha tenido precedente. Sin embargo, estamos más preocupados por tratar el nivel instruccional, mental y la parte socioemocional de los estudiantes. En casos intensivos, donde vamos a tener que apoyarlos con dándole más intervenciones a estos estudiantes para acercarlos lo más posible a la normalidad, dándole el mayor apoyo que podamos, y lo más importante es que cada escuela entienda en qué punto o en qué lugar están sus estudiantes una vez que regresen a las escuelas y lo que ellos necesitan.
And a question from Kimberly: are efforts being made to specifically reach out to non-English speaking communities to make sure that they are staying well informed about Wake County Public School updates?
I think that's something that Dr. Rangel works on consistently every week to make sure that she's reaching out specifically to our Spanish-speaking families. But what I will say is that in terms of, I think what we've seen is that the needs across our school district are vast, and to say that we're only targeting non-English speaking communities, we're actually trying to target wherever the needs are. And what we've seen in the food distribution, if that's any indication, like to give you an example, we have, at the start of this, we have about 51,000 students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. We don't know yet to what degree that number has oscillated. Our guess is that it's grown. And I think on a daily basis, we're able to meet about like 10 to 15,000, 15,000 families maybe on a good day, right? And so there is this gap, and we don't know, we can't say that all families who qualify for free and reduced lunch necessarily need food or anything like that. Basic needs are not being met. But the thing is, it's like, that's a number that we've worked from since March 14th. And so I think we're doing all we can, but I think, we still feel like we need to do more. And like to say that our efforts are being targeted towards just one group, it's not quite at that level yet. It's more like we're still trying to respond to a mass array of needs and doing the best we can.
En cuanto a la pregunta por los esfuerzos que se están haciendo para las comunidades que no hablan inglés, ese tema lo está tratando la doctora Rangel prácticamente a diario, tratando de contactarse con las familias de habla hispana. Nuestro distrito escolar está tratando más bien de buscar alcanzar las necesidades de toda la comunidad y no específicamente involucrarnos a una comunidad específica. Hemos estado atendiendo familias prácticamente diariamente, entre 10 y 15,000 familias en los días buenos, y no todas las familias hemos podido alcanzar. Sin embargo, estamos haciendo esfuerzos desde el 14 de marzo, haciendo lo mejor que podamos, pero incluso sentimos que tenemos que hacer aún más. Pero nuestro esfuerzo ahorita no está basado específicamente a tratar una cantidad especial o un grupo especial, sino la necesidad de todos.
Thanks. Maria Rosa, you spoke to some of the emotional supports available through those links. Are there any other kind of mental wellness, mental health supports for either the children or their families during this time, given that we are experiencing pandemic and also kind of civil challenges?
Through our Family Academy, we had Dr. Wen. She is an adolescent psychologist, and she is actually, her office is in Cary. And she did something for us through Family Academy, giving parents some strategies to deal with teenagers, right? And then I also had a Spanish psychologist come and talk to our Latino families, just so that again, how can they support their kids during COVID-19? So that's something that we've been doing through our Facebook live sessions that we're doing. But also we have resources on our WCPS website that parents can utilize as needed.
Sí, a través del apoyo que hemos estado recibiendo y cuál de los siguientes recursos se pueden presentar para darle apoyo en cuanto a salud mental y otros vínculos. La doctora Rangel hablaba que a través de la Academia de Familia han trabajado con psicólogas, especialmente una psicóloga adolescente que ha dado estrategias para poder estar y trabajar con los adolescentes. También hemos trabajado con una psicóloga hispana para apoyar a esos estudiantes de habla hispana. En nuestra página de Facebook también tenemos vínculos que pueden ayudar a estas familias.
The other thing I would add about the mental wellness piece is that we also have continued our work around training and professional development for our staff to make sure that they have some wellness skills, and in addition, work on some resilient skills. You know, how do I stay in my resilient zone and not get dysregulated? That's important because we need our adults to be regulated as they're working with students. The other thing too is we are working with our partnership with Alliance Behavioral Health to make sure the mental health needs that our students express, or families even express, that we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline number that families are able to access and call for help. And we've also provided guidance to our teachers who are in that virtual world of things that they need to do if they notice something happening with a student or are concerned about something that they see.
También para añadir en cuanto al bienestar o el entrenamiento, lo que es el bienestar mental, hemos entrenado, también los profesionales están entrenados para desarrollar cualquier situación y apoyar en esta área de bienestar mental, trabajar en las habilidades para que podamos mantenernos reguladas. También hemos estado trabajando con la Alianza de Salud y Comportamiento y tenemos una línea de apoyo 24 horas, 7 días a la semana para ayudar y si cualquier ayuda es necesaria. También hemos estado en guía directa con los profesores del condado escolar, que también están en ese mundo virtual, en contacto constante con los estudiantes, y que si se dan cuenta de algo está pasando, ellos puedan también tener las guías y puedan apoyar a los estudiantes.
Another question from Catherine. So outside the pilot with Bielka, and the effort with Activate Good, are there other partnerships in place to reach families and students with all of this information and the technology, or partners with other youth serving organizations or faith partnerships? Is there kind of someone working on that overall outreach coordination?
So the first part of that, we do have other teams that are working on those efforts. So we actually ramped up our social work task force to work. Normally they work in the summer in trying to identify students and make sure that they show up for school. So we actually are ramping up those efforts to look at some things more broadly around, what are the needs that families may have over the summer, and ramping up our ideas around, well, how can we do home visits in a safe way that respects social distancing, but allows our social workers to be able to put eyes on families and students to be able to help them. So the team is working on that. And we have also used our other organizations that we currently have MOUs with to get the flyer information out to them. You Thrive, even some of our organizations that run our mentoring programs on campuses, the YMCA, other organizations, Boys and Girls Clubs, have also received the information to try to figure out ways that we can make sure that families are getting the information around how to connect with school and what needs to be done to, to address any needs that they have.
En cuanto a la pregunta que dice, fuera del esfuerzo que se está haciendo, ¿con qué otros programas o con qué otras familias estudiantes se han unido para ayudar y apoyar a estas familias y en los esfuerzos? Bueno, eso es una primera parte que hemos realizado. También hemos trabajado con trabajadores sociales, ellas normalmente trabajan durante el verano para identificar esos estudiantes que requieran y tengan la necesidad del apoyo y necesitan los recursos. Necesitamos encontrar siempre cuáles son las necesidades, tener ideas y qué podemos hacer para hacer esas visitas a casa, por supuesto respetando la distancia social, pero para ayudar a esas familias que están en necesidad. También hemos utilizado organizaciones para ayudar a la repartición de volantes, información. Hemos trabajado con YMCA, con el club de niños y niñas, y ayudar a conectarnos de alguna manera a través de estos recursos con esas familias en necesidad.
Also, I've been working with some Hispanic organizations and faith to make sure that the word gets to our Latino families, working also with the media, the Latino media, as well as El Centro para Familias, ALPES, and different organizations, the Society of Hispanic Professionals, again, just to help us to get the word out there.
También hemos estado trabajando con las organizaciones hispanas, los medios latinos, centros para familias, ALPES, para ayudar a llegar a esas familias que también están en necesidad.
Great. If anyone else has questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. I have one in mind, and then there's one other one that's in the chat right now. My question, which I'm about to lose from my brain. Oh, for parents or caregivers, do you all have recommendations, given the current circumstances? Like, what is the most important thing that they could be doing for their child during this time? Because recognizing that people are working, they may not get to help their students with assignments, they may not even be connected to all of this. Like, what is the most important thing that they can be, things that they could be doing during this time?
Can I go first? As a mom of a teenager, I think that during this time, it's important for us to utilize this time as a bonding time with our kids, right? Be able to do things with them. And believe it or not, sometimes we could also include education, right? But again, it's taking this time to really get to know our kids and really talk to them and listen to them and bond. Again, COVID-19 it's something that we were not expected. It's interesting. I was reading an article that says that we as parents need to put our oxygen mask first before we could put it on our kids and our family members. So I feel that it is critical to just take this time to really bond with our kids and hear them, really hear what they have to say.
Yeah, and I'm only an uncle, a proud uncle, but also as a former teacher and a principal, I think similar to what Rosa is saying is that I think it's really important that our students continue to feel loved and cared for by the parents, but also that they understand that this isn't a permanent situation we're in, but that there's ways to continue learning, continue growing, even if we're not, you know, quote unquote, in school. So I feel it's really important to continue bonding, like Dr. Rangel said, but also making sure that, you know, like there's communication going on between parent and child in the home around both how things are going, but I don't know, like I didn't grow up talking to my parents about how I'm feeling or when things were tough, but this is a time to maybe up that trend. And even if you have a teenager who's maybe salty or like doesn't want to talk to you, still reach out and be like, hey, can we just sit down and have a chat real quick about, are you okay? And I think particularly those of you who are parents of children of color, and particularly folks in our African-American communities, like the constant communication I know already is happening, but like just the weight that is coming from this is, I think, I don't know how to predict what the impacts will be, but it's going to be something that we don't really know how to, I'm not saying we need to fall into despair, but it's a weight that's going to be tangible and we're all going to be grappling with. And I think it's important that we are continuing to talk about that and just making sure that our students and children are okay.
I think I would add, there was a question earlier in the chat about what are we most concerned about. I'm not sure if Catherine, you asked that question or not, but I'm giving you credit for that. Anyway, what concerns me the most is the impact of trauma. And when we talk about the racial climate, that's also trauma. It's trauma for students of color, but it's also trauma for other people based on how they get triggered around that. I think for families, there's got to be some way that you build relationship and you listen more than you talk. And then you also find strategies that will help you stay in your zone. Because it's when you get out of your zone that no communication happens. The cortex can't even allow you to take in any thought if you're dysregulated. So, you know, I suggest to families, I do it with my nephew and my former students and even their children. Now that I'm older, even some of them have grandchildren. So with them, I talk about resilient strategies. You know, how do you build those skills so that you become more resilient? And a very simple place to start is with, I'll put it in the chat, it's an app called iChill. And it has strategies on how you stay regulated in very tense situations. And so I recommend that kind of work around building resilience for families, because that's how you get through all of these things that we're talking about, whether it's pandemic or whether it's just society in general. So.
Okay, en cuanto a la pregunta de qué es el mejor consejo que sugieren o qué es lo más importante que deben hacer los padres o los cuidadores en este momento. Bueno, para las madres, comentaba la doctora Rangel, que para las madres de adolescentes utilizan este tiempo para pasar tiempo con sus hijos, hablar con ellos. Por supuesto, la educación es importante, pero es importante que sepan y escuchen a sus hijos, establezcan ese vínculo. El COVID-19 no era algo que estábamos esperando. Estuve revisando y he escuchado por allí algo que me llamó la atención, que decía que los padres debemos ponernos la máscara de oxígeno primero antes de que se las pongamos a nuestros miembros de la familia. Entonces es un momento para que también nosotros establezcamos un vínculo y escuchemos a nuestros hijos. También conversaban de que el señor Koh conversaba acerca de que él era un profesor también y había sido director, y no es padre, pero sí es un tío, y es importante saber que nuestros estudiantes se sientan queridos y por sus familiares. Saber que esto no es una situación permanente, que continúen estableciendo esos vínculos, manteniendo su comunicación. Y yo no fui una persona que crecí hablando con mis padres, pero este es un momento para que, bueno, vamos a tener una conversación, te sientes bien, cómo te estás sintiendo, y específicamente los padres de hijos de color en este momento, que ya deben estar en constante comunicación. El impacto que se está, por la situación en la que estamos viviendo, tiene que ser algo tangible y tiene que establecer vínculos y establecer esas situaciones para mantener esa conversación con sus estudiantes en casa. Y también hablaba el doctor Pettiford, que él estaba preocupado por el impacto y el trauma que esta situación iba a ocasionar en las familias, especialmente por el clima racial, el trauma de los estudiantes también de color y los otros estudiantes que viven alrededor de estas situaciones. Lo importante de construir relaciones, escuchar más de qué hablar, y también sugerir a las familias en que establezcan estrategias de resiliencia para poder soportar en estas necesidades. También voy a colocar en el chat el nombre de una aplicación que se llama HO para estrategias donde podamos regularnos en situaciones tensas y así de esa manera poder sobrellevar cualquier situación en la que estemos inmersos.
Thank you, Laura. That was a lot all at once.
Yes.
Great job. Way to capture it. Any last questions from the group? If not, I would love if our speakers tonight, if you all have any closing thoughts or comments to share, please feel free to share.
Kristen.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I would like to make just a couple of comments. I'm very pleased with what I'm hearing. I'm especially pleased as it relates to the alignment that I'm seeing, the collaboration, as well as the teamwork, especially between the school system and county, extension service, and right on down the line. Community voices, especially many from underserved communities, somewhat limited. And what I've observed here is some extremely good system thinking, systemic thinking around looking at things that need to be improved. And it's really kind of uplifting and very inspiring, the dialogue. And I think what is important, that we look at a mechanism to continue to spread this good news and to make sure that we are engaging all sectors of our society. It reminds me of a question that I asked at the last county commissioners meeting, probably a week ago. We were talking about the impact of COVID-19, and there are a lot of things that have happened that are really unseen, and the impact that it has, especially on our young people. And we discovered in this process that hopefully we have more in common than we have differences, but also we have discovered that there's a segment, many minorities in our population that are really hurting, and it really revealed this. And the question that I asked at our last meeting was related to one of the zip codes, and my residential district, District 5, is around the impact that COVID has had in terms of infection rate in 27610. And just listening at the dialogue here, it looks like that you have thought about nodes and especially interventions that are very, very important. But I did say, talking about the library and cuts and right on down the line, that maybe we could take a closer look from a collective impacts and collaborative point of view at 27610 and other hot spots that might need some additional special help making this transition back to the kids going to school.
Sí, quería hacer
Yeah.
algo.
Okay. Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Quería hacer algún comentario. Bueno, estoy complacido de lo que estoy escuchando, de la alineación, la colaboración, el trabajo en equipo, del sistema escolar y el condado, de la manera en que están sirviendo a las comunidades, que tienen un buen pensamiento sistémico. Las cosas que también hemos hablado, que necesitan mejorarse, y el diálogo inspirador y tratando de manejar ese mecanismo en todas las áreas de la sociedad. Hace una semana conversamos del impacto que ha tenido el COVID-19 en las personas jóvenes y hemos descubierto que tenemos más cosas que nos unen que lo que nos diferencian. Incluso en el condado donde vivo, en el Distrito 5, el impacto que ha tenido el rango de infección y las intervenciones que se han realizado son muy importantes. Y es importante toda la ayuda que se ha realizado en cada una de las áreas.
In addition, we are working very hard to make sure that we try to do the best we can for the funding of the Wake County Public Schools.
Yeah. And Commissioner West, we appreciate those comments. And I just want you to know that I think one of the byproducts of our food security efforts that have happened is that the county team led by Catherine and Bielka's here and Thomas Ray was here also, but you know, through a lot of like street level knowledge to the balcony level knowledge, what we've done is have a map that has a lot of information that are both from school. It's an internal map that's confidential, but it has both the individual needs that we're getting from schools coupled with just, you know, the way we've strategically thought about where does the food need to go. And so that's now become a database where I think if we follow where the food needs are, if we go towards Maslow's hierarchy, we know that other basic needs need to be met there. And I think there was a question here about like, do we know the demographics of who has the most need? And I feel like everyone here could probably guess. And you know, we haven't tracked the specific races of folks that we're serving, but it's going to follow along probably similar to the economic health indicators or the free and reduced lunch lines, where just to speak plainly, you know, our Latino families, our African-American families, and then I think our poorer white families are the ones that we probably interact with the most in these efforts. So I think it's important for us to also name that in this, you know, in this context of, I think we're working on as educators, and I think maybe as people, of how to just name those things and not just call it disproportionality or there's like food needs, but name that our Black communities need a specific thing, our Latino communities need a specific thing, our English learners will need a specific thing. And, you know, so we're working towards that. And I hope that this current context moves us towards a place where we could talk openly about all the tensions that exist around the racial injustices that we see that are both violent, but also economic and basic needs related.
You gave me a few talking points. Thank you.
Bueno, como equipo también tenemos que tener un conocimiento del nivel y lo que estamos viendo en la calle. Tenemos que tener también un mapa interno de las necesidades de los individuos, y eso lo obtenemos de las escuelas. Sé que algunos estaban haciendo preguntas acerca de pues si teníamos datos demográficos, pero necesitamos saber o sabemos que donde hemos tratado las diferentes áreas y donde hemos llevado la comida, ahí seguro también van a haber áreas de mayor necesidad. También hemos trabajado con las familias latinas y trabajando como educadores en proporcionarles las necesidades de alimentación y trabajando en cuanto a eso y a la injusticia racial que se ha estado presentando.
Thank you. And Catherine made a suggestion that could work for some of our different vulnerable zones, but gathering all of the existing food sites in 27610, seeing if we can pilot some more comprehensive efforts for getting not just food out, but other information or resources. I think Wendell also has kind of a high number of COVID cases. So thinking about our social and economic vitality zones and how we can do the work a little bit more comprehensively and not just site by site.
Okay. En cuanto a la información que hemos recogido de los lugares existentes, especialmente el código área 27610, y ver cómo podemos implementar más esfuerzos en esta zona, especialmente en la zona de Wendell, donde hay alta incidencia de casos de COVID, y cómo nosotros podemos implementar los recursos para estas familias de habla hispana también.
Great, and we are almost at time, but a good question just popped into the chat box from Emma. Would we be able to introduce the CRM or community resiliency model skills to youth and get trainings to teachers so they have resources ready for students when they return to school?
So we've actually been involved in that work since 2016. We've been training staff members. We have about 50 CRIM trainers in our district, and they are working with staff members around the issues of awareness for CRIM, and then for those who want the 2-day training for to become a CRIM guide, which allows you to be able to walk somebody through the CRIM strategies. Currently, we just finished our zones of regulation training for staff, and that is curriculum that can be used for students around learning resilient skills and dealing with dysregulation. So we have that in place. We have it in place, and it's growing.
And I think just to add to that, one of the reopening committees that I'm actually coordinating and leading is the Behavioral Health Steering Committee, and to the public face, that would be the SEL group. And so we have a team of people who are working on, like, when kids come back to school, and also when adults and employees and staff come back to school, what are those needs going to be that are mental wellness related, behavior related, social emotional related, and making sure that we give some concrete guidance to make sure that we start off the school year right. But we know that as the year continues, like, trauma doesn't like leave you after 1 week of school, right? It's an ongoing part of like who you are, and you know, there's going to be continued work. And one of the guesses we have as a school district is that as we approach like the work that we need to do for all, we're going to have to also get strategic about to what degree are the intensive supports going to be needed. We think that it's going to be at a higher number potentially than before, and we can't approach this thinking all kids will come back quote unquote traumatized. But like we said in the beginning, the weight that people are feeling right now is different than ever before, and that is pandemic related, it's racially related, it's also whatever people have gone through that's financial, basic needs related, whatever it might be. Like, kids aren't returning to school like quote unquote in a normal way, you know. It's just going to be something like we've never seen.
En cuanto a si se van a poder reintroducir las habilidades de modelo de resiliencia comunitarias y tener entrenamiento para los profesores y tener esos recursos listos para cuando regresemos a las escuelas. Bueno, hemos estado trabajando eso del 2016, entrenando a los miembros del personal educativo durante distintas áreas de entrenamiento y trabajando con ellos las habilidades de resiliencia para que ellos tengan estas habilidades y puedan proporcionarle a los estudiantes. Esto ya se está realizando, pero está ahora en crecimiento. También tenemos grupo de personas donde tenemos que saber cuáles son las estrategias que vamos a utilizar cuando los estudiantes, los empleados asistan nuevamente a las escuelas, especialmente para tratar sus necesidades en cuanto al bienestar mental, la parte socioemocional, sus necesidades, y establecer las guías, porque sabemos que el trauma no solo dura una semana y se elimina, sino que sabemos que no sabemos a qué grado nosotros vamos a tener que proporcionarle los recursos para el apoyo intensivo según vean los estudiantes. Sabemos que el peso después de esta situación que hemos vivido es grande para todos, muchos por la pandemia, muchos por peso financiero, otros relacionados con el aspecto racial. Es decir, que nuestros estudiantes no van a regresar a las escuelas en condiciones normales y nosotros le tenemos que prestar ese apoyo.
Awesome. We are after our time, so I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. I really want to thank Maria Rosa and Paul Koh and Marius Pettiford for joining us, and Dr. West for you also joining us tonight. And again, huge shout out to Laura Rodriguez for translating for us tonight, especially on relatively short notice. So thank you so much. And we will be sharing all of the slides and the links that were shared after the meeting along with this recording. And please, please encourage families you work with or neighbors you know to look at the resources that are shared.
Okay, quiero agradecerles a todos por haber asistido hoy. Las láminas, todos los vínculos los vamos a compartir para que por favor compartan con cualquier persona que conozcan los recursos que están disponibles para todos.
Gracias and buenas noches.
Yes.
Thank you all and good night.
All right, good night.